Faniswa Ndungane. She shared a lot of her experiences, and she is the founder of the Voice of a Widow, and she's also doing a lot of sort of making a lot of moves with regards to uplifting the widow, especially with regards to her experiences. Yeah, so it was really, really informative. And yeah, one thing that I really picked up from that was the question around why is the widow's pension not exempt from tax,
Okay.
as the maintenance, child maintenance, as well as the divorce alimony that comes as well.
How long does this take to become a complication ordinarily? Because obviously there's a declaration of like, this is where you stand.
Yeah.
And what are the kind of timelines to get your things, to get your ducks in a row before you find yourself on the wrong side of the receiver of revenue?
I think from the moment when you submit your tax return and you see that amount glaring at you, that you owe 12,000 rand.
It's time to jump.
It's time to jump. And we had ladies speaking there about how their salaries were garnished, how funds were taken from their bank accounts to cover the
Or
steps.
frozen assets and things of that
Yes.
nature.
And as I mentioned, SARS would then tell you, go to the extent of telling you or requesting from you to liquidate some of your savings in order to pay tax. So you have a situation where you have to borrow from Peter to pay Paul, and you really stuck. You're stuck, and yeah.
And this is no different from finding yourself in arrears in any other thing. You are equally responsible for it.
You're equally responsible. The only difference is that SARS has now obviously other powers that other persons may not have to freeze your assets, to garnish your pay and such.
So they've got implementation measures that are highly more effective for the purpose of collections than maybe other creditors might have.
That's correct.
Because creditors can threaten you all they want. Well, if you're one of those people who are like, ha ha,
Yes.
You can stretch it. But
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, and I see when I after the event that I attended, I obviously got very interested in the topic.
Yes.
And to see what other people around the country are doing, and I see there was a widows forum that was launched in Ipulukwane 2013.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't really seen what sort of movements they are doing, but I've got a feeling that very soon we're going to be starting to see sort of waves coming in of women standing up against our government for their rights.
Okay.
And yeah.
And I mean, it's going to have a large contingent of women who are now the sole breadwinners within the household due to the loss of a partner, and not through any separation or divorce related, like through the death of a partner that has left them with all of the partner's resources and hers to kind of deal with going forward in life.
And another question that was raised by Mampeteni was, is our government against the institution of marriage? Because if you look at how they treat the same flow of income in a divorce situation, and how they treat it when your partner who has passed on leaves you with the sum of money. What is the government's stance on marriage?
Look at that.
Yeah.
And
so it raises just a lot of questions.
And what is and I mean, does that question come because it's a gray area, or is it because of the actual black and white that's there that would seem to drive the thinking behind the question?
It's the black and white. It's the black and white that's there, because in black and white it is written alimony and maintenance is exempt from tax, and also in black and white it
but
is
God
written,
forbid you die.
Yes.
Oh,
so
man.
it is the black and white, and what these ladies are doing, they are pushing for a change in legislation, which is not an easy thing to do.
Right.
We've seen Umampeteni and her movement of ladies marching to various institutions they've marched to SARS. At the seminar, we also had SARS representatives who were in the very unfortunate position to say, unfortunately, we do not implement the laws. We can only sort of implement what is already written. And shame, I feel for the gentleman and the lady that were at that seminar, and they really were in the hot seat, and they could really not do anything much as they sympathize with everyone who was there, but it's really out of their hands. And so there's this move to now march to Treasury, march to Parliament and get this done. But as we've seen...
And the more you unpack it, the more important it seems that this happens sooner than later. Because the legislation is what really determines and drives this execution model.
Yeah.
That and I said execution, which is really good. But yes, it's the execution of the law.
Yes.
And how these situations then come about.
Yeah. But unfortunately, something like changing the law is not something that comes very easily.
No.
But that the question remains, what of the widows? What do they do? Do they keep piling on debt? Do they keep borrowing from the banks, from Omashonisa to pay the SARS? Where does that leave them in the 3, 4, 5, 10 years that it's going to take to change the law?
So, what kind of advice as a tax practitioner would you forward in such a conversation, since we are unpacking and advising in the same breath, that would be maybe steps, or not steps, but great input for people while still being two partners?
Yeah.
How do you prepare for the eventuality that whether it's you or whether it's your partner, how do you get that conversation going, and not on the emotional side, but on the practical side? Yes.
So while both parties are on the side of life, there's obviously, you need to look at the sort of arrangements you have, the policies you have, the pensions, what are their terms, so that you can then, at the time of one partner passing, you can then just put those plans into motion. From a tax perspective, what I've always advised my clients is, again, it's a if you can, but I know like 90% of the time they can't. But the only way around this is to voluntarily have yourself pay over more tax than is calculated. Because on the one hand, your employer will calculate the tax according to your income tax bracket.
Right.
But on the other hand, you've also got this other pension, which would then push you up a bracket. So approach the GPF and voluntarily ask to be overtaxed. That's the one thing. The other thing is try and enter into a payment arrangement with SARS, and ask for them to sort of, for you to pay.
So this is like banking with SARS.
That's
because the legislature doesn't really accommodate anything else, and you never know what the figure is going to be. It
can be calculated, which is where then I'm headed.
Okay.
So going forward, and I've done this for a couple of my clients. So we've looked at the numbers for 2023 already, and we've sort of calculated what would the tax liability be for 2023. And then we've looked at the bracket in which your employer is taxing you, and what, if any, tax is being deducted by the GPF. And we've then calculated what the difference annually would be, and what you can then put aside on a monthly basis. So I would encourage them to get in touch with a tax practitioner that can perform that calculation for them.
And it's, the more we go on with this topic, the importance of this calculation happening.
Yes.
And this is if you are definitely certain that, excuse me, one of these days, you need to have this conversation.
Yeah.
Today is just as good a day as any, I mean, take the link, send it to your partner of this very interview.
Yeah.
When they get home, open the topic. It's not going to be new. It's not morbid. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not scary. It's not threatening.
Yeah.
It's actually eye-opening and I guess very responsible to have.
Very, very responsible, because you do not want to find yourself on the wrong side of SARS. SARS can be brutal.
And in this context, death and taxes takes on.
Yes, the two certainties in life. Death
So,
and
for those who then want more information and maybe want a more in-depth, maybe their situation is unique.
okay.
Does this also count for life partners and common law partners, etc., or is
Yes.
this?
Yes, it would. So one would need to look at what are the provisions under the GPF. Obviously, they are provisions with private provident fund and retirement annuity institutions as well, and those are obviously too complex to get into because each fund.
That's on a
would
per
have to-
per fund basis.
Yes.
Okay.
But with the GPF, I know they do cater for civil unions, customary unions, as well as life partners. Yes.
Okay. And if they need more information from the Tax Cafe, how do they get in touch with you?
They can call me on 061-874-2546 or email info@thetaxcafe.co.za. On social media, across all the platforms, and the Tax Cafe.
Awesome stuff. 12 minutes now before 11 o'clock. Parting shots as far as widows and tax?
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of planning needs to be done beforehand. Where you do find yourself in the unfortunate situation, reach out to a professional, reach out to your team of financial advisors, lawyers, and tax practitioners, and don't be afraid to ask. I mean, when you ask, you get answers, and when you get answers, you can know which direction to move.
And one of my favorite sayings, there's no such thing as a stupid question.
Never.
Answers, different story. But Faniswa Ndungane from the Tax Cafe. Get in touch with her. Get in touch with a tax practitioner. If you are in a civil union, if you have a life partner, or if you are married, but have not yet had this conversation, or even you are planning to get married, if you are still ahead of the curve with the planning, etc., maybe that's a good time to have it too.
Definitely.
And it may be a good topic or opportunity then to open up the books a bit more and say, so what is the situation? What's your setup like?
Yeah.
Because mine is like this, and I don't know how this is going to play out for us in the event that something tragic happens.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you next week. Next week we are hopefully being joined by another professional who will be a legal practitioner,
Yes.
but who deals more with widows, wills, trusts, and all of that we've touched on, but in the context of what we're talking about now.
Yes, definitely.
Awesome stuff. Faniswa, thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you next week.
Cheers.